A no-limits alliance. That's how the joint statement characterizes relations between China and Russia. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin taking aim at the United States in their remarks. It's Putin's first visit abroad since last week, his swearing in to another 6-year term. Charlotte Hughes has the story.
A round of applause as Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin attended a concert marking the 75th anniversary of China-Russia relations. After official talks, Xi indicated that Russia and China agree on a range of issues, including their stance on the wars in Gaza and Ukraine.
Both President Putin and I agreed that the settlement of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is urgent. It is necessary to earnestly implement United Nations resolutions and resolve the Palestinian issue on the basis of the two-state solution. We both agreed that a political settlement of the Ukrainian crisis is the right direction.
Earlier, the two leaders signed a joint statement on reinforcing the strategic partnership between the two countries and vowed to step up their defense and military ties. Shunned by the West over the war in Ukraine, Russia increasingly relies on China as a key economic partner. Last year, trade between the two nations reached $240 billion. The two leaders presented a united front, as both signalled they would resist Western pressure to loosen their ties.
Russia and China relations have significantly developed and reached an unprecedented high level. They are built on a solid foundation of good equality, mutual respect and support. It is this strategic course that meets the fundamental interests of the peoples of Russia and China.
Putin and Xi also denounced what they described as increasingly aggressive US behaviour. It comes a day after the US Secretary of State raised concerns about what he said was China's support for Russia's military and announced that the US would continue to levy sanctions on Chinese companies supporting Russia's defence sector.
For more, let's cross to London. Natasha Kuhrt is Senior Lecturer in International Peace and Security at King's College. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Thank you. Good evening.
Were you able to parse through the a joint statement beyond bland announcements of hoping for peace in Ukraine? Were there any nuggets that showed if there's actually any movement?
I mean, I think there is a great deal of symbolism in the meeting, coming obviously just at the beginning of Putin's new term and after the reshuffle that Putin has recently undertaken. And of course, we also have elections coming up in Taiwan next week. I think there's a lot of symbolism in it. I think they'll be looking to expand on pre-existing projects and taking cooperation forward in certain areas of the economy and so on. And obviously, the fact that Belarus, the new defense minister, was part of the delegation is significant, especially as he, of course, has a lot of experience as well in dealing with China from his previous role as well as economic minister.
We heard in the report the clip of Vladimir Putin where he says he's very happy with the fact that I'm paraphrasing here, that relations have gone from strength to strength, ties have gone from strength to strength between Russia and China. When you think back now to that visit he made to Beijing during the Olympics on the eve of his bid to try to take Kyiv back in 2022, is that really what the Russian president thinks? Is he really happy with the way things are going with China?
Well, I think he's getting as much as he can from China, but China's certainly taking as much as it can from Russia. I don't think that Russia can really expect a huge amount more from China. I think if I were Putin, I would be happy to have China as a friend, considering it's probably the only friend that Russia has of any stature.
Even though that means right now, even though that means right now that the Chinese influence in eastern parts of Russia is hugely increasing.
I assume by eastern parts of Russia, you mean the Russian Far East that adjoins China. Yes, but this has been the case for a long time. Some of those areas are almost totally reliant on China for trade. I think Putin is happy with it. Why wouldn't he be happy with it? He and his cronies extract the rents from the oil and gas, and they do very well on it. But obviously, if one were part of the local population there, one might not see things in the same light.
Let's go through the timeline very briefly here. You had the U.S. Treasury Secretary, the U.S. Secretary of State, both traveling to Beijing. Then you had the Chinese president coming to France and visiting more like-minded allies, if you will, in Hungary and Serbia. All this diplomatic shuffling to and fro, does that tell you anything?
Well, I think it's been fairly clear that China, would like to drive a wedge between Europe and the US, between the European and the US, although a lot of the time we're probably doing quite a good job of doing that by ourselves. So I think China looks after China's interests, and clearly, it's had long-standing ties to Serbia and Hungary. It's nothing new. So, I mean, probably the meeting in France was more significant than the ones with Hungary and Serbia. Obviously, it's more sensationalist. The meetings with the populist leaders of Hungary and Serbia, but I wouldn't make too much of that.
Is it all just window dressing, or
No,
is there something in the mix?
dressing. No, but it's about securing Chinese investment in those countries. Obviously, China wants to be seen as this responsible stakeholder in international relations. That's the image that China wishes to project. The US for China is the meddler, the spoiler, the country that essentially tries to divide and aims at a return to the Cold War. So from China's point of view, from China's perspective, it is the responsible player and stakeholder, the country that wishes to bring an end to the war in Ukraine, presents itself as a, kind of peace broker and so on. When
the U.S. warns China not to send, for instance, dual-use technology to Russia that can be used against Ukraine, how much leverage does it have?
How much leverage does the
United States have?
Yeah. Not much. I don't think that China is heeding the US. I think it has heeded it to some extent. It has, some exports did drop off, but the thing is, there's always the plausible deniability around because they're dual use. So it's quite difficult, I think, for the US to really manage that.
Natasha Kuhrt, one final question. This is a 2-day visit. Do you expect Vladimir Putin to return straight home, or can we expect a visit to North Korea on the way back?
Yeah, well, it's possible, I guess. I don't know for sure. I wouldn't rule it out. But for now, I think the priority is China, and I think that Putin wants to ensure that he's paying due respect to China at this present time.
Natasha Kuhrt, so many thanks for speaking with us from London.
You're welcome. Thank you.